Welcome back to the Morning Beat and Therapy Thursdays. We're joined again by one of our dear friends, psychotherapist James Guay. Thank you so much for being on the program.
Sure, happy to be here.
I've been experiencing something that I didn't know how to name. And I think a lot of people are experiencing this right now. As we work from home, we spend a lot more time than ever on Zoom or FaceTime as a way to get work done or interact with friends and family members. But we're seeing more and more cases of body dysmorphia sort of popping up as we spend so much time on our computer screens. First and foremost, can you give us like a in layman's terms, what is body dysmorphia?
Well, I mean, I think we need to define what body image is first, right? It's our inner view of our outer physical bodies, right? And I think what people don't recognize is that our actual appearance has very little to do with how attractive we feel, right? It's like it's not always tied together. So our internal felt sense of our attractiveness doesn't always line up. And so for people with body dysmorphic disorder, it's not just some self-doubt or insecurity. It's actually full-fledged, and it can really get in the way of their ability to engage, go outside, work. It can get in the way of these Zoom calls because they might prefer phone over webcam, and seeing themselves. It can be really, really debilitating at its most extreme level. But we all deal with body image issues, right? At one point or another in our lives.
Well, it's interesting because even above Zoom and FaceTime, I'll say for myself, I did struggle early on with anorexia and bulimia. And I have been gaining weight in quarantine. Like I've been working out,
right?
But I'm still gaining weight. And I have to really control my mind. I have to say, hey girl, like calm down. What advice do you have for people that are also, it's inevitable. We're home, we're eating. People may be gaining weight, or they may be on the other side losing weight when they want to gain weight. What advice do you have for them, especially when they then have to Zoom, feeling like people may see them in this new light?
Yeah, well, we're all trying to do the best we can with this pandemic and stay-at-home orders and the fear and grief and shame and everything that sort of is entailed with that, right? So the more that we can kind of cut ourselves some slack, I know that's easier said than done sometimes, but recognize that if we need at this moment in time to self-soothe in a variety of different ways, whether that's through food or other types of things, that if we can bring in some mindfulness of that it's actually an act of caring for our emotional health and well-being, our physical health and well-being, and recognize that these are extreme circumstances, right? So we need to be much more lenient and caring and compassionate with ourselves in this place.
I will say it's wild that we're having this conversation today, because just yesterday I was talking to my therapist about almost this exact same thing. And my partner, Emil, and I have been together almost 8 years. He's 10 years younger than me, and he's in great shape. He's ripped. He's got a six-pack on a bad day. But through quarantine, what we've realized is that neither of us has worked out as much as we normally would. But what that means for me is that I'm a little fluffier. What it means for him, though, is he loses weight. He's still at that age where he likes to bulk up and look muscular. And when he's not able to do that, he loses weight. In my mind, that makes me feel for myself so unattractive. But I think he's gorgeous. But then when I talk to him,
it's the reverse.
I'm gorgeous. He thinks and it's affected our relationship. It's affected how we interact with each other physically. Any tips for people in relationships maybe going through that right now while we're quarantined together?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we need to recognize where this comes from in the first place, right? There's a huge societal pressure to look a particular way for defining our worth and value.
Well, not in Hollywood, though. We don't have that problem.
No, never.
It's perfect. It's the perfect veneer, right? So, there is a multi-billion-dollar beauty industry for a reason. We get messages from a very young age about, what we're supposed to look like. And it's often different than what's natural for us, And so, if there's some ways that we can limit the messages that we're receiving, recognize where it's coming from. First is just having an awareness and insight of what's the problem. And then second is finding certain aspects of ourselves that we actually appreciate and enjoy. It might be your pinky. It might be your ability to move and be agile. It might be, it just whatever it is. It can be really, really specific, and then start from there, right? It's also, I think, the more that we can treat ourselves like we would our partner or best friend, where we're like, hey, I love you regardless of what you look like, right? When we can turn that inwards and give that to ourselves, we're just going to be operating from a much better place. When we feel our own sexiness, regardless of our body shape or size, and when we can recognize that we can be healthy at various different body shapes or sizes, it's really about, that getting some sort of physical activity. It doesn't have to be an hour workout. It's about moving as much as our body allows for us to do so. And also about caring for ourselves by having at least some good nutrient-based foods that help to sustain us.
I just ate a cookie a minute ago.
I know. Stop it.
Well, that's sustaining, right?
I want to ask you this before we do let you go.
Yes.
And just a quick answer. I want to acknowledge, too, that we may be seeing people who are using this quarantine to get into shape. A girlfriend of mine has never looked better. And she's like, this is what I'm doing. And then I looked in the mirror and I was like, oh, Mikalah, get it together. But what do we do? Like when we see that, how do we remind ourselves, relax, you don't need to use your quarantine to get in shape. We're in a pandemic.
I know. For God's sakes, cut ourselves some slack, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And again, it's just so difficult because we see other people doing it differently. There's a lot of shaming in terms of we're supposed to be productive and creative and produce all kinds of stuff. We're supposed to look a certain way. We're supposed to be in better shape because we all have all this time. And it's just not reality. We need to come back to the baseline of like, hey, we're struggling. We're doing the best we can. And the more that we can be kind and compassionate, the more that we can be loving of ourselves, and that's going to fluctuate and change over time, right? What we look like today. I remember taking a picture when I was 20 years old, and it was supposed to be a before photo. And I looked at it 10 years later and I was like, what the hell was I thinking? I was so
gorgeous.
fit, right? So instead of like judging ourselves now and recognizing in retrospect, we're going to probably go, wow, I wish I would have enjoyed that moment in time. Let's enjoy where we're at today as much as possible.
Well, on that note, it's the perfect way to leave. Enjoy yourself now. You don't want to look at that photo 10 years later and beat yourself up. James, it's never enough time with you, but thank you for acknowledging that. And we do look forward to speaking with you again soon.